The Battle of Bannockburn is the battle where English forces under command of King Edward II, outnumbering opposing Scottish army by 3 times, managed to lose. If you want to know how to lose to undersized army, this video is right for you. Stay tuned. The Battle of Bannockburn on 23rd and 24th of June 1314 was a victory of an army of King of Scots Robert the Bruce over the army of King Edward II of England in the First War of Scottish Independence. Though it did not bring overall victory in the war, which went on for 14 more years, it was a landmark in Scottish history. King Edward invaded Scotland after Bruce demanded in 1313 that all supporters still loyal to ousted Scottish King John Balliol acknowledge Bruce as their king or lose their lands. Stirling Castle, a Scots royal fortress occupied by the English, was under the siege by the Scottish army. King Edward assembled a formidable force of soldiers from England, Ireland and Wales to retrieve it, the largest army ever to invade Scotland. This attempt failed when he found his fate blocked by a small army commanded by Bruce. The victory against the English at Bannockburn is the most celebrated in Scottish history, and for centuries the battle has been commemorated in verse and art. Though the exact location for the battle is uncertain, a modern monument was erected on the field above the possible site of the battlefield, where the warring parties are believed to have camped, alongside a statue of Robert Bruce designed by Parkinson Jackson. The Wars of Scottish Independence between England and Scotland began in 1296, and initially the English were successful under the command of Edward I, having won victories at Battle of Dunbar in 1296 and at the capture of Berwick in 1296. The removal of John Balliol from the Scottish throne also contributed to the English success. The Scots had been victorious in defeating the English at the Battle of Stirling Bridge in 1297. This was countered, however, by Edward I's victory at the Battle of Falkirk in 1298. By 1304, Scotland had been conquered, but in 1306, Robert the Bruce seized the Scottish throne and the war was reopened. After the death of Edward I, his son Edward II of England came to throne at 1307, but was incapable of proving the determined leadership his father had shown, and the British position soon became more difficult. In 1313, Bruce demanded the allegiance of all remaining Balliol supporters, under the threat of losing their land, as well as the surrender of English forces encircling Stirling Castle. The castle was one of the most important castles held by English, as it commanded the route north into the Scottish Highlands. It was besieged in 1314 by Robert the Bruce's younger brother Edward Bruce, and an agreement was made that if the castle was not relieved by midsummer, it would be surrendered to the Scots. The English could not ignore the challenge and prepared and equipped a substantial campaign. It is known that Edward II requested 2,000 heavy armored cavalry and 25,000 infantry, many of whom were likely armed with longbows, from England, Wales and Ireland. It is estimated no more than a half of infantry actually arrived, but the English army was still by the far largest ever to invade Scotland. The Scottish army probably numbered around 6,000 men, including no more than 500 mounted forces. Unlike the English, the Scottish cavalry was probably unequipped for charging enemy lines and suitable only for skirmishing and reconnaissance. The Scottish infantry was likely armed with axes, swords and pikes, and included only a few bowmen. The precise numerical advantage of the English forces relative to the Scottish forces is unknown, but modern researchers estimate that the Scottish faced English foes 1.5 to 2 or 3 times their size. Edward II and his advisors were aware of the places the Scots were likely to challenge them, and sent orders to their troops to prepare for enemy established in boggy ground near the River Forth near Stirling. The English appear to have advanced in 4 divisions, whereas the Scots were in 3 divisions north and Chilterns. which were strong defensive squares of men with pikes. Thomas Randolph, 1st Earl of Murray, commanded the Scottish vanguard, which was stationed about a mile south of Stirling near the Church of St. Ninian, while the king commanded the rear guard at the entrance of New Park. His brother Edward led the 3rd Division. According to Bambour, there was a 4th Division nominally under the powerful Walter de Stewart, but actually under the command of Sir James Douglas. I already made a video about this great knight. The Scottish archers used US state longbows, though these were not weaker or inferior to English longbows. There were fewer Scottish archers, possibly around 500. Most medieval battles were short-lived, lasting for a few hours, so the Battle of Bannockburn is unusual in that it lasted for 2 days. On 23rd of June 1314, 2 English cavalry formations advanced. The first was commanded by the Earl Gloucester and by Earl Hereford. They encountered a body of Scots led by Robert the Bruce. Bruce and Henry de Burgund, nephew of the Earl of Hereford, faced off in what became a celebrated instance of single combat. Burgund charged the Bruce, and when the two passed side by side, Bruce split Burgund's head with his axe. The Scots then rushed to the English forces under Gloucester's and Hereford's command, who retreated, struggling back over the Bannockburn. During the first day of the battle was in favor of Scottish. Hills and mistake of commanders didn't allow English to effectively use both cavalry and longbowmen. Knights of English vanguard had to fall back under the pressure of Scottish army. Meanwhile, cavalry division under command of Robert de Clifford and Henry de Beaumont, avoiding Scottish flanks, went to Stirling. Having solved English maneuvers, Robert Bruce sent schillerons of Thomas Randolph to intercept English battalion. English knights without bowmen's support were unable to withstand Scottish pikemen gathering into schillerons, and English division was destroyed. During the night, the English forces crossed the stream known as Bannockburn, establishing their position on the plain beyond it. A Scottish knight, Alexander Seton, who was fighting in the service of Edward II of England, deserted the English camp and told Bruce that English morale was low and encouraged him to attack. In the morning, the Scots advanced from New Park. Not long after the daybreak, Edward was surprised to see the Scottish pikemen emerge from the cover of the woods and advance toward his position. As Bruce's army drew nearer, they paused and knelt in prayer. Edward reportedly said in surprise, "They pray for mercy." "For mercy, yes," one of his attendants said, "but from God, not you. These men will conquer or die." The Earl of Gloucester had argued with the Earl of Hereford over who should lead the vanguard into battle. He had also tried to persuade the king that the battle should be postponed. This led the king to accuse him of cowardice. Goaded by accusation, the Earl of Gloucester advanced to meet the Scots. Few accompanied Gloucester, and when he reached the Scottish lines, he was quickly surrounded and killed. The English were gradually pushed back and ground down by the Scots schillerons. The English longbowmen attempted to support the advance of knights, but were ordered to stop shooting as they were causing casualties amongst their own. The English then attempted to deploy the English and Welsh longbowmen to flank the advancing Scots, but they were dispersed by 500 Scottish cavalry under the Mareschal Sir Robert Keith. Although the Scottish cavalry is sometimes described as light cavalry, this appears to be a misinterpretation of Barbour's statement that these were men-at-arms on lighter horses than those of their English counterparts. The English cavalry was hemmed in against the Bannockburn, making it difficult for them to maneuver. Unable to hold their formation, they broke rank. It soon became clear Armies de Valence and Gilles de Argenton, reputedly the third best knight in Europe, that the English had lost the battle, and Edward II needed at all costs to be led to safety. Seizing the reins of the king's horse, they dragged him away, closely followed by 500 knights of the royal bodyguard. Once they were clear of the battle, de Argenton turned to the king and said, "Sire, your protection was committed to me. But since you are safely on your way, I will bid you farewell, for never yet have I fled from the battle, nor will I now." he turned his horse to charge back into the ranks of the Scottish, where he was overborne and slain. Edward fled with his personal bodyguards, and panic spread among the remaining troops, returning their defeat into the Rout. Pursued by James Douglas and a small group of horsemen, Edward fled to Dunbar Castle, from which he took a ship to Berwick. From the carnage of Bannockburn, the rest of the army tried to escape to the safety of the English border, 90 miles, about 140 kilometers to the south. Many were killed by pursuing Scottish army or by the inhabitants of the countryside they passed through. Historian Peter Rees wrote that only one sizable group of men, all foot soldiers, made good their escape to England. These were a force of Welsh spearmen, who were kept together by their commander, Sir Maurice de Berkeley. The majority of them reached Carlisle. Weighing the available evidence, Rees concluded that it seems doubtful if even a third of the foot soldiers returned to England. If this estimate is accurate, of 16,000 English infantrymen, about 11,000 were killed. The English chronicle Thomas Walsingham gave the number of English men-at-arms who were killed as 700, while 500 more men-at-arms were spared for ransom. The Scottish losses appear to have been comparatively light, with only 2 knights among those killed. The defeat of the English opened up the north of England to Scottish raids and allowed the Scottish invasion of Ireland. In exchange for captured nobles, Edward II released Robert's wife, Elizabeth de Burgh, sisters Christiana Bruce, Mary Bruce, and daughter Marjorie Bruce, ending their 8-year imprisonment in England. This finally led, after the failure of declaration of Arbroath to secure Scotland's independence by diplomatic means, to the Treaty of Edinburgh-Northampton in 1328. Under the treaty, the English crown recognized the full independence of the Kingdom of Scotland and acknowledged Robert the Bruce and his heirs and successors as the rightful rulers. Well, that's it for today. Hope you like it. Like it if you do, subscribe if you don't want to miss more. Thank you very much. Bye bye.